This conference will now be recorded.
Hello and welcome everyone to Oceanside Library. I'd now love to introduce Joanna Peters, life coach for How to Choose You During the Pandemic. Thank you, Joanna. Take it away.
Hi, I'm Joanna. So thanks for joining today. This is a module that is going to be in two parts. One is how to choose you and why you don't. And then I've added a piece on the end, which is specific to during a pandemic or other hard times. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. Definitely add any comments or questions in the chats as we go. Okay, so how to choose you and why you don't. Let's see if I can make this work. Oh, there we go. Yeah, like that. Okay, so why we typically don't choose ourselves, how that affects the mind, body, and soul. And we're going to look at some tools and strategies to choose you. So first of all, quiz. Why don't women prioritize themselves? A, they don't know what they want. They haven't had time to think about it since the 1990s. They're happy if everyone else is happy. It's just easier. C, they tried once, no one cared, had a tantrum, ate a pint of ice cream and called it a day. D, already frustrated generally, so speaking up typically causes a fight. E, all of the above. So I know for me at one point before I learned a lot of these schools, a lot of these tools and training, I was definitely E. So one of there's top 4 reasons, and we're just really going to touch on the first one, people pleasing today. Why women don't prioritize themselves, people pleasing, lack of clarity on what they want, didn't set a personal boundary, or conflict avoidance. So we're just going to do a quick look at what's deeper, but we're just going to focus on strategies today. So emotional wounds create symptoms, right? So any unhealed childhood trauma symptoms, people pleasing is a symptom of it. It's not who you are. It's not your personality type. You didn't get it in DNA from your mom. It's either your trauma or your parents' trauma conditioned into you, right? So people pleasing is something you learn. It's not something of who you are, and that's important to know. So redefining who you really are, either after your own trauma or after being conditioned and parented not to put yourself first. The strategies to support healing are knowing what you want, validating yourself, choosing yourself, knowing you're enough, setting and guarding boundaries, and speaking up with love. Right, so we're just going to dive in a little bit today, as I said, into the people-pleasing part. So people-pleasing is defined as a person who has an emotional need to please others, often at the expense of his or her own needs or desires, right? So it's not just liking to please others, it's an emotional need to please others, right? Something feels off to you if people aren't happy. So symptoms include wanting to rescue or fix problems for others, feelings of failure if others are unhappy, uncomfortable, or upset with you, emotional exhaustion, anxiety, and often depression, numbing when others aren't happy or you imagine you have upset someone. So numbing example is comfort eating or drinking, etc. So I put together this little diagram because it's important to slow motion what happens in our brain super fast about people pleasing, right? So this is the slow motion put into a slide diagram. So what happens first of all on the left, when the soul speaks, you have an urge, yay. And this can be anything at all. It can be you want to change your career, you want to go paint on a hill, you want to run for president, or you want to change the TV channel. Doesn't matter how big or little. It's something that you have a hot urge to do. And then when you are caught up in this cycle of people pleasing, when others are inconvenienced, uncomfortable, or not happy with the thing you want to do, then that stops you. what happens super quick is your subconscious mind gets frozen. It's like a conflict avoidance trauma of being from either being harshly parented if you were taught to listen and in a harsh way, not heard, silenced at a cellular level. There's a bunch of different reasons why you might freeze. That freezing doesn't feel good to us. So what we immediately do with our conscious mind is we rationalize it, right? So we rationalize by telling ourselves the thing we wanted to do, it's not a big deal, or others have it worse, or I like to make others happy, or the old classic, it's fine. When you tell yourself that it's fine and it's not a big deal, you're telling yourself that you don't matter and you're silencing yourself, right? And when we repeatedly deprioritize ourselves, we make ourselves sad and we stop having integrity in ourselves, right? So if you think about it, if you had a friend who was constantly not listening to you, telling you that your things were not a big deal when you didn't matter and never did the things that they said that they were going to do, you wouldn't be friends with them, right? So just this is just to show what we do to ourselves. Another important thing to mention is that the others box, the inconvenienced, uncomfortable, or not happy, sometimes we just imagine that they might not be happy. Sometimes we make that part up, right? Because very often if we do actually speak up, the person's, inconvenienced for a second, maybe an eye roll and they're actually good. But when you're really caught up in people pleasing, that stops you. Or you hold it in for a while and then you explode at people is another way this can go. All right, so that's the cycle. So let's just reflect for a second. So do you have any desires or dreams that you haven't acted upon because someone else always needs something? Maybe put others first. How good are you at keeping your word to yourself about things that you say are important to you? So if you say, I want this, I want to change jobs, I want to get healthier, I want to, whatever the thing is you say you want for yourself, how good are you at keeping your word to yourself, or do you put others first? And if you were to treat yourself as you treat, if you were to treat yourself as you treat others, you listen to them, you hear them, you honor them, you keep your promises, what might change for you? So here's how we interrupt people pleasing. So same thing, you have a soul, your soul speaking, you have a thought, you have an idea, yay. Perhaps the others are actually inconvenienced. Let's go with that you're not mind reading or imagining that they are. The frozen part is something that you can go back and heal, inner child healing, and many different ways you can do that. But right now we're going to talk about how with your conscious mind, you can catch yourself with behavior. From a cognitive perspective, you can rewire your brain to know that you're lying to yourself when you say it's fine, it's not a big deal, others have it worse, etc. Right? So right now, if you can notice when you're shrugging your needs and wants off, and you can start to retrain yourself to kind of just go a bit quiet and think, maybe I can pick a different strategy to speak up for what I want. Which we'll talk about in just one moment. And then the more you do that, the more you learn to trust yourself and you just get more, there's not that suppressed, frustrated, resentful feeling that tends to grow over time when you treat yourself like this on a more frequent basis. So list out, this is an example of a tool you can use to retrain your mind. You can make a personal list of what your rationalizations are. Here are some examples on the left. It's not a big deal. It's fine. I'm happy if they're happy. I like most of the TV shows he likes anyway. It's not important enough to cause a fight. Then the ones on the right are ones that you can replace your thought, right? So it's not a big deal is the old one. The new one is, well, if it matters to me, it is important, right? All the little things that matters to others, we treat as important. So we treat all the little things that matter to us as the same important. It's fine. I'm happy if they're happy. Well, the truth is, when I don't choose me, I get sad and resentful. right? So that's the truth about that. I like most of the TV shows he likes anyway. Watching more of what I enjoy would make me happier. That's the truth, right? So it's just the things that you've been used to saying, you replace. It's not important enough to cause a fight. If there's people pleasing along with a bit of conflict avoidance in there, then you don't need to turn this around immediately and speak up for yourself in an incredibly empowered way. You can learn how to do that, but at least give yourself the space to think about it and speak up calmly about it later. Here's a tip there when you're first getting started with retraining your thoughts. So the rationalizations, just as a note, they very often are in our own minds, but could be that's what some of that rationalization is what we were parented with. Like, stop making such a fuss about that. Don't be oversensitive. You're being over emotional. Don't be annoying. Like all the things we were told when we were younger that silenced us, right? So some of that might be we're repeating what we heard. Some of it might be in our marriage currently, right? Or in a relationship currently where if when you bring something up that you're not happy, the other person is genuinely uncomfortable, it might be real. And because they're uncomfortable, they might be like, it's not a big deal. So that's something to notice if when you start to think through what matters to you and treat yourself as important, just notice if other people are, to what extent their statements you're agreeing with them. So that's a point around that. What else we got going on here? All right, so that's mindset training. Okay, and something else, if this is something that you struggle with, are mindset affirmations, right? So affirmations and truths to shift the people-pleasing mindset, right? So other people's emotions are not my responsibility. That's a big one because many of us when we're people-pleasing, think that we are literally responsible for all the humans in our lives that we love. We're responsible for keeping them happy, right? You're not. So that's an important thing to remind yourself, that everyone's journey is unique and they're exactly where they're supposed to be on their journey. And other people are entitled to their bad days, and because that's where the growth happens. And I thought that this applies to, if we're mothers, this applies to children too, right? So we don't need to rescue our children from their bad days or from their unhappiness. We can put ourselves first and offer a few things, but ultimately it's not our responsibility, because I matter too, I choose me. Anyone got any questions in the chat? I can't see. I don't think so. Okay. Okay, so as I said, the more you don't put yourself first, the more you don't speak up for yourself, the more you put your life and your wants and your needs on the back burner. Like, oh, I'll go to the gym when, after I've gotten this far in my career, or I'll do better at my career when the kids are older and they don't need me as much. Like, just that kind of like reasons why not us and reasons why not us today. That makes us fall out of integrity with ourselves. We don't trust ourselves as much, that we're going to keep our word to ourselves about what matters to us. So this is about restoring your self-integrity, right? So tips on how to do that. Again, I matter. I choose me. I'll set clear, manageable intentions, declare what I want to myself and others, set boundaries and guard them, and keep my word to myself. So these are intentions you set for yourself. And the more you talk about this, like when I was learning all this stuff and going through it for the first time, I very much shared it with my partner, my husband. I very much, shared it with my girlfriends. I'm like, I'm really working on this thing. Like, I think it's very common to work through this type of thing. So speaking it out loud and asking for support is great too. And the main thing around this type of work is to just love yourself so fiercely that once you have a vision of what this could look like, what you want and what you need to speak up about it and say, and so it is. Just make it happen. Because as you've seen from some of the diagrams, we are absolutely in our own way a lot of the time. It's not the others, it's not our circumstance, it's not the jobs. Okay, so that's the end of that mini presentation. If you're people pleasing, it could be showing up for you more now you're in a house full of people and they're not leaving. So I wanted to make sure I included that part, because if you're a people pleaser and, as I said, living in quarantine, then you're going to be even more exhausted and emotional right now. So I'm going to switch presentations now. Do you want to switch on the chat real quick while I switch presentations, Okaria? Or hold on.
What was that, Joanna?
I didn't know if anybody had any questions while I'm switching presentations.
No, nothing in the chat yet.
Okay, cool.
I'll let you know if it pops in.
Yep, okay, good. Okay, so how to choose you, especially in hard times, right? So I don't know if anyone's noticed, but we're in a bit of a hard time here. Everything's magnified, everything's harder, right? From many, many reasons that you don't need me to tell you what they are, but definitely harder to keep your energy higher right now and to look after yourself, right? So here are some tips. So in hard times, we'll experience what I call survival only times of our lives. We need to go into survival mode, right? And you know you're there when your heart's hurting, your brain's melting, you want to crawl under the covers for a while, you've considered moving dimensions. It's an emotional shutdown. It's normally triggered by major life events like divorce, grief, global pandemic, etc. So honoring your emotional health is important during those times. So the reason why I wanted to do the people pleasing presentation first is because if you struggle with that anyway, you're going to struggle with choosing your emotional health during these times as well. So you may only need an afternoon or a week if you do it right to feel the benefits from a clear brain and from honoring your feelings. But I wanted to share with you how to do it right so you actually feel better. So you're going to set the intention to lower your standards is step one, right? So the key is to give yourself a break and allow yourself to feel good about it. Because very often we're kind of taking a break or lowering our standards by rebelling, but we're secretly feeling guilty and feel bad about ourselves that we're not doing the things, right? And what that does is that layers on a layer of guilt and failing that makes us feel worse, right? So this is intentional lowering your standards, right? So no guilt, you're choosing this and you're doing it on purpose for a while, for a period of time, not forever. So the key is to give yourself a break and allow yourself to feel good about it. That's important, right? So setting the intention of doing less for a period of time relieves guilt and speeds up recovery because you get the real emotional break you need. So this too will pass, and when it does, you can ramp up again, live your best life according to that circumstance. So, but for now, but be kind to yourself and cross some things off of that to-do list and have fun doing it. No guilt. So, and just a reminder around that, your core personal values most likely don't include many to-dos, many action items to execute. They're normally ways of being like, I want to be loving, kind, fair, treat people well. So the main things that matter to you, you're going to do, you can still do regardless of any things on any to-do lists. So the big but I should is going to come up, right? The first level of resistance is, but I've got stuff I need to do. So give yourself permission to drop the shoulds or don't should on yourself, right? In regular times, you shouldn't be ever shitting on yourself anyway, but these are basically set by how we would prefer to live, ideally live, and what daily success means. So if you like all your dishes done, or if on a regular basis, certain things that you're like, okay, now I'm successful, whatever you've defined that, and that's personal and everyone defines it differently. But that's all in regular times, right? So there's also on top of that our partner's version of acceptable house standards and endless family requests. Our parents' voices are in our heads on what standards are acceptable to them. that kind of echoes in us as well, unless we've trained ourselves to listen for that and make our own choices. Society also has a bunch of shoulds sprinkled on top just for fun. Here's the thing though, this is your life and you can do whatever you want, right? For real. So getting that, reminding yourself of that and that empowerment helps you to drop the shoulds, especially during hard times. You get to choose what you're doing. You get to choose your standards. You get to choose anything you want, right? So there's no rules here. Here are some thoughts I had when I first started doing this for clients and for myself. Do one thing that makes you happy every day, even if it makes no sense, right? So if you want to buy a bubble maker, go blow bubbles out in your backyard, that makes you happy, do it. Accept less work effort from my kids. So this was when during homeschooling or just in general, just accept that they're struggling and adapting too. So accept less from them. So it's kind of lowering your parent standards too, but on purpose, and not feeling guilty that you're not parenting. Close doors on rooms. I release myself from cleaning during this time, right? Maybe, I don't know, hopefully have a few rooms you can close and you can pretend they're not there. Make a request for help from someone, and maybe someone living with you that isn't pulling their weight, or you can just say, I just need this, or a family member or whatever. Reach out to support others, because that actually lifts their own energy as well when we're supporting others. And definitely seek connection. So find do those video calls, have those social distance walks and things like that. Hide the vacuum. That's something I did. Only cook and do dishes, right? Not everything else. It doesn't matter for a week. And this is, as I said, this isn't forever. This is just to give yourself an actual guilt-free break so you can heal and fix your energy, and then you can get back at it, right? It's not for the entire time. Stick your hair together with dry shampoo and put it up. Declare kitchen as self-serve. Help yourselves, right? So it's truly personal. These are your rules. This is, I'm putting myself in survival mode. These are the things I'm doing. These are the things I'm not doing. And this is the thing I'm going to do for fun. And this is the way I'm going to lift my energy. Just design it for yourself in order to get through your survival mode. So when you're deciding what your survival mode will look like, discern what taking it down a level might look like for you, because some things are going to add stress to you if it's not done. And, look at that. So just most things, if they're going to add stress to you when they're not done, it's back on shoulds. So look at the previous slide, like, are you sure? Who's telling you should? Says who? It's your life. But just go through that thought process with yourself. And if maintaining higher standards is coming from pleasing others, notice that and evaluate accordingly. See previous presentation, you matter. Pray, meditate, or take walks in nature to gain perspective and ask for spiritual support, especially if it's stuck in the house a lot. Just walking outside and looking at the stars is a great uplifting. The moon was gorgeous last night. I did that. And again, make it happen. Love yourself so fiercely that once you have a vision of what this could look like, of what you need, speak up about it and say, and so it is. So that's the presentation, but I'm happy to stick around and talk to answer any questions or talk about what's coming up for people.
Thank you, Joanna. Hold on, let me just end the recording here.